Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and we're coming to you from Woodstock, New York, and the name of this program is Let's Live. And I have a wonderful guest this evening, and the subject of our evening is Reiki. So I'm going to start off by inviting you to introduce yourself.
Hi.
Tell us who you are and how you found Reiki.
Hi, my name is Elise. I found Reiki when the West Hurley Library offered a Reiki class, and I didn't really know what Reiki was, but I was curious about exactly what it was, and I went to the class, and you were the teacher, and that's where the journey began.
That's where it began. Had you heard about Reiki before?
I had heard about it, but I didn't understand exactly what it was. I had heard about it or saw people advertising it, but I had never had a Reiki session personally. And then when I went to the class, that's when I learned all about it.
And what about that particular class attracted you?
It opened up a new world to me, to get me there in the first place. Okay. I was just curiosity. I was just curious, like, okay, what is this? And is it something that I can use? Is it something, just, what is it? And I knew it was something good, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And that's what got me there.
Now, at the time that you took that class, did you know anybody that practiced Reiki?
No.
You did not?
No, I didn't.
Nothing?
No.
That's very interesting. You didn't even know really what it was?
Nope. I knew it was a healing energy. That much I knew, but other than that, no.
And how long ago has that been now?
Oh God, I'm guessing it's been a little bit over a year, because we did the first class and then we did the second class. So.
I think it's been almost 2 years, because it was before the start of the pandemic.
Oh, definitely.
And the pandemic started a year ago last January.
Yes.
So it's even before then.
Yeah, I have the dates on my certificates. I should look.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Have you kept up with any of the other students?
Not really. The funny thing is, I did see one of them in ShopRite today.
Oh, did you really?
Yes. I saw her in ShopRite, and we just kind of quick said hello to each other, and that was it. And there's another girl, Eileen. She had been sitting next to me. A very nice girl, and she had studied Reiki years ago, and then just never had an opportunity to use it. And then I saw her in the class, and it wound up she was a yoga teacher in the Hurley Library. So I ran into her at the Hurley Library, and we did before the pandemic. I went to her house and we did a Reiki exchange, which was very nice. And then she wound up on your Zoom reflexology class.
That's interesting how people, once they learn Reiki, they learn other things.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been drawn to learn other things?
I have. I did the reflexology on Zoom with you. But I'm looking at things on the internet and stuff like that, but I haven't physically gone to anything.
I wonder how much of it, because you really haven't pursued anything, I'm wondering how much of that is because of the pandemic and how much of it is just because you just haven't.
It's pandemic.
You think so? You
Yeah.
think maybe if the opportunity arose, you might study something else?
I've been online, reviewing things and studying, but nothing in person.
Nothing in person. I know that when I first started with Reiki, it kind of opened up a door for me. And I started taking all kinds of things. I didn't care what it was. If somebody offered a class, if I had the gas to get there and the money for the class, off I went. And I did that for a couple years, and I was surprised when I got up here that there wasn't that much being offered compared to Northern Virginia. But there aren't that many people up here.
Good point.
There were classes at the Open Center, and I went to a lot of classes at the Open Center, but there, up here there just aren't that many people. And I'm wondering, did Reiki open up any questions for you?
Well, it opened up the whole spirituality and the healing energy, and I've always been curious about that, but I guess I never really had the time before to pursue it, to look into things. So I'm retired now, so that gives you the freedom to look into things that you're curious about. I've been doing tarot cards and things like that, so just to keep myself busy.
I know that when I first, the one thing I studied before I studied Reiki, I studied animal communication, and I did that because I was really heavily into animals, and I was into the animal rescue, and there was this famous woman was coming to give a class up over in Clinton, which is not far from here. It's over by Utica, and I went and I studied animal communication with her, and I was so surprised that A, it was so easy to learn, and B, once you get the confidence of an animal, they will reveal all kinds of spiritual observations that I never even, for whatever reason, I just never, especially, all kinds of animals. And one thing that really just floored me was horses. The way they talk about and feel about, the cosmos and the earth and different things like that. And so it is true that once you open yourself up to the spirituality of something, then the questions never stop.
Yes.
Or they did not for me.
Yes. Now I'm curious, how long have you been practicing Reiki? I need to think. It had to have been in the 90s. Okay.
It had to have been in the 90s. Very definitely then.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up here after 2001, and I had already been teaching reflexology and teaching Reiki then. But I started learning massage therapy in 1980 in Virginia. There was a massage school there called the Potomac Myotherapy Institute. And I went and took that course. But after I took the massage therapy, there was this wasteland of time. There was nothing else offered. Nothing. That school offered nothing, and I couldn't find anything else. And it wasn't until after I went and came up here to Clinton and learned the animal communication, and then went back and started looking for a Reiki teacher. That's when I really unearthed an awful lot. But I had to dig. I mean, because at that time and in Northern Virginia, if people did anything spiritual, they didn't talk about it very much. You had to, it was all underground, really, And I got up here, and I found out that Reiki, I think, is taught is practiced in the hospitals. Is that the case?
I don't know.
And I at the time, I backed off from it because someone said, well, but it's Reiki, but we don't call it Reiki because they think it's a cult. And I just said, fine. Fine, that's it. And I never, never went anywhere with it at all.
Oh. Now that you practice Reiki, what do you do to get ready? If you have somebody that has an appointment with you, what is your process?
Well, the first thing I do, if somebody has an appointment with me, the first thing I do is make sure that my healing space is neat and clean. That's the first
a good
thing.
start.
I mean, I really do. I try to make it, and I set up the music, and then they come in, and I try to make them comfortable, and then we just go from there. So it's not necessarily anything to having them come in.
Okay.
It's really just making sure that the place is clean and neat. And it was very interesting because I haven't given a Reiki session in months. And a woman called this afternoon and she said, I would like to learn Reiki. And then I looked around this room and I thought, there hadn't been anybody in this place in a year and a half. You're going to have to get yourself together, old girl. So that was good.
Yes.
Yeah, but I really don't do much of anything. One of the things is I do have music there, and I put on something, and it can be chants,
Mm-hmm.
it can be classical music, it can be Reiki music, it can be all kinds of different things, and if it's a person's first time, it doesn't really make much difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they come for a few times and I know what kind of music they like, then I will, for example, if they like chants, then they will have chants every time. Or if they like Deuter, then there will be Deuter every time, or whatever. And it's, do you put on music?
What I do is, if I'm inside, I do put on music, but we did a Reiki session on Wednesday, and I have like a screen house out in the back, and there was no music. I had no way of getting the music out there, but we didn't need music because I have some Woodstock chimes going and the birds, and it was very peaceful.
You didn't need it. You didn't need it at all.
Then, sometimes in the house,
Yeah,
I feel like I need it.
That's very true. And I did have one experience about music that I did not understand at all. I had a client who was coming, it was in Woodstock, and I had a client who was coming every week. And she was very comfortable coming to me. And things were going along, she was a client. And I put on different things because I had not yet really figured out what it was that she liked. And for whatever reason, I put on a tape, put on a CD. And it spooked her. As it turned out, and she told me at the time, and then I realized that when she said it, that I was never going to see her again. She said, "That is my favorite piece of music." And I realized that the way she said it, she had never shared that information with anybody. And for whatever reason, that music, I crossed a line. And she never came back.
Wow.
So you never know.
Yeah.
And I have had at the time, I've winnowed it down in the last year. I have really slimmed it down, and I will be selling these tapes because I spent 20 years collecting them, and I never wore any of them out. And so now when I am at the Mowers Meadow this summer raising money for the hungry, I will be selling these. So there's a lot of them. So the reason I said that is because to illustrate that I could have chosen any of several hundred.
Yes.
And so the lesson that I learned from that was that A, you can cross a line and you should not. And B, I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know. Whatever.
Now, when a client first comes to you, do you interview them as to what they're looking for, and do you tell them what to expect?
I usually talk to them for a few minutes in an effort to make them feel comfortable. but it is not an interview. I take no records. I fill out no forms. There's nothing. I do that on purpose. And if it's a gift certificate, then we talk a little bit, and if I try not to, I don't want to get too personal with them. I try to say to them, well, why are you here? Why now? Why now? And why not last month or next month or whatever? And we go with that for a little while. And then I'll tell them that I'm going to start at their head and go down to their feet. And then by then the music will be on, and they will, once they're comfortable, then I start. And I just start at the head and go down to the feet.
Now, you said you use the music. Do you use crystals? Do you use candles?
Nope.
Nope, just the music.
I do not use candles, and I don't really use essential oils either. I went through a phase where I did use essential oils, and I had many, many of them. And I will be also selling those at the Mowers Meadow this summer. What I would do with the essential oils, because the sense of smell is very, very intimate, I would offer them like 3. I would say, would you like to use one of these 3? And most essential oils will have a name. And usually they will go by what name attracts them. Okay. So they don't get with the aroma. Yeah. They get with the name. And then I will use that oil on them. But I do not. I don't do essential oils anymore, and I do not do candles. My space is too small. I have animals, and candles are not safe. You know?
You have to be careful.
And so I really just don't do them.
Now I have a question about if a client has a pacemaker. Is that an issue?
No. I've never asked anybody if they have a pacemaker. It never has even come up. Okay. Yeah. In any of your reading, has it ever come up? Has anybody said anything to you?
Well, just when I was doing some research, it had mentioned, I've never thought about it, and it mentioned if someone has a pacemaker, you should avoid the heart chakra because the energy. So that's the only reason I'm questioning it, that I don't know.
I would not.
Okay.
I would not. I never ask. I do know this, that when you work on a person's body, and I can always tell if they have received any bypass surgery or anything like that. But you also know, if you're open to it, if they had an appendectomy or whatever. I mean, you know those things without even knowing. It's just part of the process. I also, and to me, I guess I block a lot of it out. If a person has tried to kill a person, not the person, if the person on the table, if somebody has tried to kill that person, you know where and how.
Wow.
And so we're just going to get on the table. I give them I try to do 3 positions on the head, and I try to not get too close to the throat, and I do the shoulders, and I will try to do this so that you have the throat and you have the heart chakra together. Okay. And you'll have, because there are other chakras in there that are not necessarily major chakras, but they're all concerned. So then you're here, and then I'll go on down. Because if you try to separate these chakras and get too close to these chakras, then it gets too busy. And I find that it's just much easier.
So combine them. Okay.
But you know, everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people who do Reiki are very visual. And they see things.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a student one time who was young, and she was about half afraid of her skills. And she could see things. She would see, things. So that if she had her if she had her hands on someone's head, she could tell you. She could see what was going on, and that kind of scared her.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to do. You want, especially for the first session, you just want this person to have a good time.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And relax.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Yeah.
If nothing else.
Right.
You want them to walk away feeling wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's what I want.
Now, with children, do you do it a shorter amount of time?
With children, I let the child be the guide. If a child gets restless, it's over.
It's over. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's also true with adults too. Once they begin to get a little bit jittery, they've gotten what they
They've
need.
had it, yeah. What about the elderly?
Well, that's a kind of a sore point. All the books say, well, anybody over 70, you only do 10 minutes. If I walked into a healing space for a Reiki session and somebody looked at me and gave me a 10-minute session, I would feel slighted. So I don't.
Well, I'm talking frail elderly, like,
I'm talking frail elderly too, girl. They get that, that's discrimination. I just, we don't discuss ages.
Okay. Okay. Now, I want to ask you about when you have someone on the table or a chair. Do you stay on their left side, closer to the heart?
No.
No.
Well, I have a table which is up against the wall.
Okay.
So when
right.
So when you're working on a person, you're only on one side.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes care of that one. And if it's a chair, as in a chair, then you do whatever you're called to do.
Yeah. Well, I find that I'm favoring the left side, and I'm just
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
That's what happens to work for you.
Yeah, I just don't know why. I'm just curious.
There are some teachers, and I guess this is why there are some people who will go take Reiki from this one, and I went and took Reiki from this one. But there are some who are very, very particular about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher, Mary Ruth Van Landingham was so lovely. Mary Ruth Van Landingham just said, look, you just do this. And while you're working on somebody, if you're suddenly called to go to an elbow, we'll go to the elbow. And what about the knee? Then go to the knee. She just was so loose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you run across these books, and I even have handouts that say things like remove the jewelry and unbuckle the belts. And to me, that is not what you do. If somebody needs Reiki, then that's what you do. And I don't think that the energy cares whether the jewelry is there or not.
Yeah, I did read to remove the jewelry.
Yeah, no, that's silly.
Yeah.
But that's me talking.
So what was your most profound Reiki experience?
Well, I don't know if I had a profound Reiki experience. I have learned something from every session that I ever gave. And I had one client who had, I had a couple of clients who had hepatitis. And one had hepatitis C. And she wanted foot reflexology and hand reflexology. And that was because she also had something in her hands and feet were so cold that really all she wanted me to do was hold her hands and feet because she was so cold. But then I had another one that had hepatitis C. And I gave him a regular session, and he would just feel wonderful. He would just hop right off that table and trot on off. And the good feeling that he had would last about an hour. Mm-hmm. And then there would be this down. And then he wouldn't come back for another week. And what I gleaned from that was that if he had come back maybe the next day,
Right. Yeah.
it was working, but there wasn't enough of it.
It's too spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had another client who had MS, and it was the same thing. But you couldn't get her to come back, the next day. In both cases, they just kind of gave up, which is sad.
It is sad, yeah.
Yeah. We could have
worked on it.
Yeah.
Now, when you're performing Reiki, do you have visions yourself? Do you see colors? Or?
No. I do feel things.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, when I do give a Reiki session, I do touch the person. I do hold my hands on the person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use any tools of any kind, and that's the same for reflexology. And when I did massage, I didn't use any tools of any kind, and that's because I wanted to feel whatever I felt. And there's a guy, and I need to get on the net with him and try to find out if he's still around. Although I'm sure he is, because I think he's probably younger than I am. Who introduced or worked with, advertised or wrote about a thing called Distance Reiki. And with Distance Reiki, you put your hands on a person, or your hand, or however, or hover, or whatever you do. And then you begin to feel something. And sometimes with Distance Reiki, it goes beyond the hand. It goes like maybe up the arm. And he said, Arjav Petter said, that once it goes beyond the hand, you need to lift your hands off and break the energy. And you can go back, but just don't let it go so much further. So that's my primary focus. A couple of times when I have worked with a person who had cancer, when I could get the person to talk, what I felt and what the person felt were the same things, which was kind of wild.
Yeah, that's nice, yeah.
Because I sense something, but what I sense may not be what you sense at all.
Right, exactly. Now, how do you feel after a session? Are you relaxed? Are you energized? Are you...
I just feel regular. I don't feel tired. And I think that if you do a session and a person is tired, that maybe you need to rethink what you did. Because Reiki is not supposed to be tiring.
No.
I don't. Do you feel fatigue?
No, I don't feel fatigue. I feel calm.
Okay.
Yeah, and at peace.
Right. Grounding.
Yeah, right. Grounding. Perfect.
But I think that if somebody is giving Reiki and all of a sudden they feel tired, something is not right. I don't know that, but that's my thought.
Now, do you feel like you have more energy at like a different, like morning, afternoon, evening? Do you feel?
Well, I do feel like I have more energy in the morning because of my age. My energy when I was in my 50s and 60s and early 70s, I could do anything I wanted to do during the day because, whatever time I had, there was some. But now I kind of have to ration my energy.
Yeah.
So but when I'm going to teach Reiki, I will work in the afternoon or in the evening, and that's not necessarily a high energy thing, so that I have the energy to teach it.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
It's so I guess when it comes to Reiki, energy is not something that I have to worry about.
Okay. Now, do you find if it's snowing out or raining, like there's a different energy if you're performing the Reiki?
No.
You don't? Okay.
When I'm doing Reiki on someone, it's the person and my hands and the connection.
Okay.
So that you don't want the person to be cold.
No.
And that's one of the reasons why whenever I have a person on the table, I try to cover them up. Because as people get grounded and they get more relaxed, and as they go out, because people do lose consciousness, they begin to get chilly.
Okay. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So that's why I do that. But no.
No, you don't feel like weather?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay. Do you have a spirit guide?
That's interesting. I must have because a lot of times I find myself thanking my parking goddess for different things, and I have things that happen and they shouldn't have happened, but they did. And I'm not a great believer in coincidences. But I don't have a face. There's not a face that goes with it. I do know that my grandmother definitely talked to God. She definitely carried conversations on with God. And she was not nutty. She was with it.
My mother did too.
Yeah,
She did.
She did.
Yeah.
But that's a very interesting thing. We have to all have some kind of guidance. And whether that is in the form of a human being or of something that has human shape. The woman that taught me Reiki told me that Raphael was the Archangel Raphael was one of the archangels that took care of me. But when we are born, there is no guidebook. There's no recipe book.
Right.
There's no nothing.
Right.
So the fact that there is nothing tells me that there is something in another way.
Yeah.
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 But then you have this question, what about these people who find themselves in trouble all the time?
True.
And I definitely will hear, messages that sometimes I don't pay any attention to, and I'm trying to learn to pay attention to. I don't know. I really don't know.
Now, when you first start a Reiki session, do you set an intention? Do you have like a favorite intention, or do you do?
Well, in the beginning, because with classes, we did talk about intentions, and when Karen and I did, we did exchanges for a long time. We did intentions, and the intentions were wild, because they changed. But a lot of times when I'm working on somebody, I will not set an intention, because that person knows why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just let whatever that person
Right.
is motivated to feel or do
What
or
they
whatever,
need. Right.
that's for them.
Okay.
And I don't ask them about intentions, because sometimes you think, well, if you start asking somebody, what is your intention? Because I don't know them,
Mhm.
I don't know
Right.
if they even understand what
Right,
an
right.
intention is, or if they believe an intention. And I try very, very hard to not step on somebody's belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times coming to a Reiki session is pushing that, it's pushing that awfully far,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's somebody at home that's saying, you're going to go
You're
over
gonna
and
do
see
what?
that
Yeah,
person?
right, yeah.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
So I just don't, they just do whatever they do.
And when you finish with the session, do your clients discuss what they felt with you? Some do, some don't. Or?
Some do and some don't. And a lot of it depends upon how comfortable they are,
Mm-hmm.
and whether they're even willing to admit that they have experienced something.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a first session? Is it the 10th session? Is it something else? I used to kind of push that a little bit, and I even quit that. And the reason I did is because somebody was talking to me at one point, and I realized when she was talking that she had really felt something else, but she wasn't comfortable, so she was lying.
Oh.
And so I just, you just don't want to go too far.
Right, right.
And
right.
you never know how far is too far.
Mhm.
Even if you work on somebody every week for a year, you do not know. And there is a point beyond which we do not go.
Mm.
Because when you go beyond that point, they will not come back.
Mm.
And when they don't come back, we are not the loser, they are the
Good
loser.
point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Because there's always somebody else that's going to take their place, but that's not what you're there for.
Now, what kind of reaction do you get from just people in the public when you tell them that you are a Reiki practitioner? Or do you?
I don't.
You don't. Okay.
If it's been a long time since I've been in a situation where I needed to tell somebody what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And years back when I was telling people what I did reflexology before I did Reiki, because reflexology was more socially acceptable than Reiki. I studied Reiki and practiced Reiki and taught Reiki in a community in Northern Virginia where it was taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I came into Woodstock thinking that, well, gee, this is Woodstock. And boy, I got my comeuppance without even thinking about it. I was over at, I was volunteering at Family, and we were there on Sunday afternoons, and I was supposed to be there to give reflexology. And we all got in a circle. And I had been doing this several different times, before we had and they still do this group all the time. I mean, I don't know what they do now. This has been 20 years. But when it was my turn, I said what I would like to do is, offer Reiki to everyone in the group. And it was completely the wrong thing. Completely the wrong thing. And as a result, I did not go back in there for a long time. And the woman's religious belief system was not one that accepted Reiki. And so what I learned from that was you cannot make any assumptions.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm more than happy to talk to people about Reiki any way they want, but I'm very careful not to impose it on someone.
Or assume that they're interested.
I can remember also many years ago going to somebody's house. She was having people over for coffee or something, and on the coffee table she had 2 or 3 brochures about Reiki. There used to be a company that put out brochures about Reiki. And I realized that she was afraid to say anything, and this was the way that she, did it. And that's why my book does not have it in the title.
Oh.
It's kind of not confrontational at all.
Interesting.
And you just never know. I haven't, in many years, I haven't gone to the computer and looked up Reiki even. So I don't know how it's being well received. I don't know if it is being well received.
Yeah, I don't either. I've been in the house.
Right. We're just doing our thing.
Right. Yeah.
The question that arises is, do you feel like you're doing enough Reiki?
I would like to do more, but with the way things are, and it's all long distance right now for the most part. And but I'm grateful that I can do it long distance. On the other, the other hand, and it's all family for the most part, and they all seem to be embracing it, whether they're humoring me or truly embracing it, I'm not sure, but I'm loving it. I'm just loving the energy, and I'm loving the fact that I can at least do that much during these crazy times. So.
If you are if anyone is trying to introduce himself or herself to a community offering Reiki, and by community I mean different people, there are several different things you can do. One is with business cards, but you got to have at least 1,000, and start leaving your business cards everywhere. And of course you'll be giving out hundreds and thousands, and they won't necessarily come back. Another thing that is well received is to get a booth at Mowers Meadow. And offer Reiki through a chair. Chair Reiki is a common thing. One thing you have to do if you're going to go to Mowers Meadow is be sure and ask for something in the shade. They have a couple of booth locations that are small that would fit right into a chair. I'm there in the summer, I'm there every Saturday. What I may do is make some space available for a visiting Reiki practitioner, which would be an interesting concept. And you may sit there all day long
Right.
and not do anything, but if you have a sign that says Reiki, because you don't see much advertising of Reiki.
No.
Also, one of the things that you can do, and this can be very daring, but it's worthwhile, is to start contacting people that you do know and just say, I'm looking for 100 people. I need to document 100 Reiki sessions. Have we ever talked about that?
We did at the end of the class.
Yes,
and then COVID hit.
Yes, and nobody did it.
Nobody could.
And very, very few people do it, but it works. And that is that you tell people that you're looking to document 100 Reiki sessions. And the charge is like $5 a session. I always like to have people charge something. People have to give.
I wanted to ask you about that. That they say there has to be an exchange.
There has to be an exchange. I had one student in Virginia that she was working in an office. She worked in a law firm, and she worked in one of the fancier law firms in Washington, D.C. God knows it's hard to find one that's more fancy than the one she was in, and she was a legal secretary. And so on her lunch hour, she would do Reiki sessions on people, and she would ask people, I'm going to be doing a Reiki session. Would you like to be my person today? I'm fine. Okay, well, listen, will you bring me a glass of water?
Okay. But there has to be an exchange.
There has to be an exchange. And then you start yourself a journal, and you have the person's name and address and telephone number, and then you write just a couple of little notes about it, and then at the end of this journal, you've got 100 different sessions. And truthfully, I must have done 100 sessions with Karen, and I am so sorry that I didn't journal those, because you never know when you do them how fabulous they are. And I'm going to, you can also get a job. There are interesting jobs that you can get where you just use Reiki. I find that I use my Reiki all the time, but I don't tell anybody about it.
Right.
And of course, they know that I'm doing something. They're not, but all I do is touch people on the shoulder. But nobody touches anybody in today's market.
No.
And here's this old lady going around touching people. And so they don't know whether that's just because I'm crazy or what. I guess I don't know. I don't know at all. Oh my gosh, you have asked the most interesting questions. You have done great, girl.
This is your life?
This is your life. These are wonderful. What other ones have you got there?
Okay, you want to go? Let me just. It hasn't happened to me yet, but it's going to happen. Have you ever started a session and it wasn't working? And if that happens, then what?
Absolutely, I have. Well, not really.
Because you don't know what they're feeling.
Right, you don't know what they're feeling.
So you might not feel like it's feeling.
It's not working. It's going to come back and hit you in the face.
Okay.
I had a woman who had me, I went every week and I gave reflexology classes to her until finally I just quit. I just told her, I said, I can't do this anymore. She was very, very ill. And every time I tried to do Reiki on her, it would just come back and hit me in the face. And she was very ill, and she definitely wasn't going to die of the disease, but she had a thing where at the time we were all careful that I wasn't going to catch it from her.
Hmm.
And so, but I can tell you, she just didn't. And you know, you do distance Reiki.
Mhm.
Have you ever had anybody come to you and say, will you do distance Reiki on?
What I have had, this tomorrow at 1:00, my granddaughter's in her final test for her black belt. She's
Oh gosh.
14 years old, and she tells me the time of her test. It's 1:00 on Saturday. So the kids will ask me for things like that, track meets.
Where is she?
She's in New Jersey.
And then she's going to be finishing this particular class?
She's starting at 1:00 tomorrow. So I will start my long distance maybe 12:15 to give her, to calm her down, so that when she walks into this test, she's ready.
How often do you do these tests?
How often do I do long distance?
No, the test.
It's a really amazing process. She had one last week just to get the black belts, but she had a packet of things she had accomplished before she could even get to this test period. She's been going to karate for like 6 years, but now she's finally at the black belt stage.
I am going to suggest that you put together a gift certificate and send it to her teacher.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any guff from this guy at all. And I think that it would be lovely if this guy could get a gift certificate for a distance Reiki session. So that's something that you could do, you know?
That's a nice idea. I like that idea.
You wouldn't do that to everybody, but there are some that you could do that on, and definitely, a black belt in what?
In which art? Which form of karate?
Martial arts, karate.
Yeah, martial arts. Yeah.
But have you ever had anybody come to you and say, would you do a distance healing on my cousin Fred, who is in Ohio?
No, but what I do, I don't know many people up here, but there's one woman that I do know, and her grandson has cancer. So when she told me, you know, I met her, we were walking on the reservoir and I met her, and so I said to her, I'm going to keep you in my prayers. Is that okay? And she said, absolutely. So now I send Reiki to him without.
Okay.
But no one has come to me and
Okay.
asked me this.
That's something that we need to kind of work on, so that you can have the experience of bringing in a person other than the person that you know. I had, during the first Iraq War and during the second Iraq War, I had people calling me and saying, you know, my son is going off, and I would say, okay, you know, what's his name,
Right.
and where's he at? And these women would talk to me, and then I would have this person. I mean, I can't necessarily give you, well, ask this and this and
Right.
this, but I would start saying, okay, where is he? When's
what's
he
their
going?
name? Right.
How old is he?
Right,
Blah, blah,
right.
You know, and all of a sudden, I would have this person.
Right.
And that's an extremely wonderful experience. And that might be something for you to ask your daughters and your daughter-in-law. Maybe they know somebody that they could ask you to give Reiki to this person.
Right.
So that you could have this experience of bringing in this person. And, if they ask you to bring in, you know, my son Joe or whatever, and Joe doesn't want the Reiki, you're going to know it. You're going to know it.
Okay.
And what I always did, is I would say, okay, this week we're bringing in this Reiki for so-and-so, and then I would say, this Reiki is for so-and-so, and if he does not accept this Reiki, I want it to go on to the women and children in Iran.
Okay.
You know, I would
Right.
forward it to, so that it never came back.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of experiences where it comes back, and that's what you're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to get you to do, is work with people that you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
so that you do have this experience, and so you will
Know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and not take it personal. You need to do that for your professional development.
Okay.
And does your daughter and your daughter-in-law, do they know that you're doing Reiki?
Oh, yes. I text them and say, I'm sending you Reiki now.
Okay, then tell them you need, ask
Yeah.
for their help. Say, look, you know,
Yeah.
my teacher says I need,
Uh-huh.
because you really do need to do that.
Okay. I know one time I approached one of the in-laws' parents, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing Reiki now," and she said, "Somebody's daughter did that to me, and I got nothing from it." So that I knew, okay, leave it there. And
Well, okay, that's all right. That's a real thing. A lot of times, when people first receive a Reiki session, they're clueless. They don't know whether they got Reiki or not, because they never had a Reiki
Right.
session before.
Right.
So maybe she did receive Reiki and she didn't know.
Right. And she's a kind of a high-strung person anyway.
Yeah.
So.
So, if you have a chance, go back and tell that woman, I'd like to try this again. I don't see you doing it, but I think it would be great if you would. I am around
her. I will mention it to her.
Tell her, Thurman said I should, and
Thurman
I
says.
gotta do it, man,
Get over here.
Yeah, because that's the only way you have these experiences. And also, learning about Reiki is an important thing. I mean, you have been giving Reiki during a wasteland.
3 minutes.
Yes, and we are coming to the end here. Well, do you have any last minute questions?
Yes.
Okay, quick.
One more quick one. How do you bring the person back at the end nicely? Like when the end of the session and okay, time's up, but you don't want to say get off my table. So
I go over and I touch them on the shoulder, and I say, "How did it feel?"
Okay.
Because they're gone. They're out.
Yeah.
How did it feel? And that kind of brings them back. And no, that's a very important question, because then you need to give them 2 or 3 minutes to come back into reality.
Right.
And not only that, you need to give them 2 or 3 minutes to make sure they're not going to go outside your door and get in the car and have a wreck. So you need to chat with them for a few minutes. Well, how did it go, and what did you feel? And sometimes they can talk, and sometimes they can't. And well, can I give you a drink of water? And I used to give people drink of water, but I don't do that anymore, because I learned, that sometimes they're not ready for that.
Okay.
I was religious about water for a while, and then I learned, well, this isn't necessarily good for everybody. And if they really do like water, and if they do it, then they've got it in their car.
Right. A lot of people have their own
so
water
I don't
now.
do that. But I do chat with them for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and that's it? Is that our last question?
Yes, for now.
For now.
We'll come back another
That's
night.
great. Well, this was fabulous. Thank you so much. And listen, we're going to have another show here in a couple of weeks, and I thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this show this evening.